this is dkdynamite, and tonight we're going to be talking about something huge for zombies that could really turn things around. A bit of a plot twist that could change the way you look at the storyline for the future of Vanguard. Definitely stay tuned. But before we jump into that, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And as you guys are probably already aware, we're currently waiting for devs to get back into the office as soon as early next week. Hopefully that is. I only make a zombies video like once a week, so I always hope there's something exciting to talk about whenever I do make one. There's no doubt in my mind that once Treyarch does return, they have a fair amount of content still planned for their Anfang that hopefully sees the light of day, because you know what, behind the scenes right now things are in shambles. You have QA getting fired, devs going on strike, it's the holidays, people are going out of town. I mean, so much is happening all at once and almost all at the wrong time as well, which has significantly impacted the longevity and health of Vanguard as we know it. But with that being said, starting off with what I call the pull factor. So this is something that I feel every storyline typically has throughout the entire gaming industry, not just Call of Duty, and I think we saw the pull factor quite a bit throughout Black Ops Cold War Zombies specifically. First off with the Machine, right? Because it's pretty hard to start a new storyline with a brand new set of characters and have people care about that. I personally have always had the opinion that if Treyarch would have done the Chaos story after ending Ether in Black Ops 4, more people might have been on board with a new story going in a new direction, but the fact that they started Chaos during what I call the climax of Ether, I think that definitely painted a bad picture for Chaos altogether, and nobody really cared. So Chaos suffered from that, and I think Treyarch knew if they started the Dark Ether storyline with no connections and no tie-in to the old story whatsoever, and also never made references to the old story, while going in a whole new direction, just, you know, having the story called Dark Ether with no actual meaning behind it, that probably would not have worked out, and I believe Treyarch knew that the entire time they were writing it. Now look, I hate nostalgia baiting more than your average Call of Duty fan, I really do, but the thing is, Craig Houston has very carefully decided when to bring back certain characters, how to do that, and to do it in a way where it doesn't ruin the arcs they may have had in previous Black Ops games, and we've seen that just wonderfully with characters like Weaver, Samantha Maxis, Eddie, and I'm sure many others that we'll end up seeing in future games that he ends up writing. I also think it's really cringeworthy to see people that may not have interest in a certain story or a certain game or some type of narrative, and then all of a sudden they only get interested because a fan favorite is brought back. I'm not a fan of people that do that, but it's everybody's right to like stories whenever they want, however they want. So if a fan favorite character is what makes you like something, or what helps a game's longevity, or what helps a zombie story thrive, then so be it, right? So what if Vanguard Zombies does something similar and does it with a character who, just like Weaver, comes back with a rich new story to explain his whereabouts in between old Black Ops games? Let's talk about the man himself, Viktor Reznov. And yes, I know he's dead, and you know what, I think there's plenty of plausible theories out there that he may have actually survived the events of Vorkuta and didn't actually die, but none of that matters, right? Not in this video. This is way before Vorkuta, going all the way back to World War II. Now, I think anybody who's played Treyarch Call of Duty undoubtedly knows Viktor Reznov, the Wolf as they call him, the iconic Russian officer with questionable morals and a vengeful spirit. What many don't know, however, is that there are implications that he or a soldier who may have encountered before who was close to him may very well return in Vanguard Zombies, and in fact, we've already gotten to see his descendant in the Black Ops Cold War Zombies chapter. But first, a bit of a recap on the man himself, Reznov, in case you guys may have forgot. So, we know very little about Reznov's life before World War II. Despite having joined the Red Army as a sniper before the conflict, he was not from a military family. In fact, his father was not a fighter, but a musician who played his violin on the streets of Leningrad. When the German advance started with Operation Barbarossa, the Wehrmacht slit the senior Reznov's throat as he slept, instilling a burning hatred in the son. From then on, Reznov became hellbent on destroying the German Reich and the evil it stood for. This hatred took him over to Stalingrad. As the Red Army had just begun fighting back and organized offenses against the Wehrmacht at the time, Reznov made it his mission to assassinate General Heinrich Amsel, an infamous general responsible for many of the massacres across Russia, and as we see in Vanguard, not the only notorious general in Stalingrad at the time, there were others. Unfortunately though, Reznov was caught in an ambush and forced to hide among the bodies in the fountain at Red Square. This ambush should never have happened. However, the Russian general Nikita Dragovich had refused to send troops as backup for the troops, likely because Reznov was one of his greatest rivals in the Red Army. With little option left, the Wolf suddenly noticed another soldier hidden but alive amongst the corpses, a private named Dimitri Petrenko. Wounds to Reznov's hands now meant he would never snipe again, so beckoning the young soldier over, he gave him his rifle and showed him the basics of sniping from stealth, using the environment as cover and the sounds of the battlefield to cloak any gunfire. Moving through the city, Reznov informed Petrenko of his mission Berlin, and that now, to have any hope of winning the Battle of Stalingrad, Dimitri would have to be the one to assassinate General Amsel. After a duel with another sniper and many close calls, the two soldiers locate the SS general, and Petrenko ends his life with a single shot. Fleeing the scene, the two men escape into the river Volga that runs through the city. 3 years later, in 1945, Reznov would once again save Petrenko, this time from capture by Wehrmacht soldiers on the outskirts of Berlin. From there, Reznov, along with Chernov, a soldier with more of a passion for writing than killing, and Dimitri, would cut their way all the way to the Reichstag, where despite losing Chernov, the two remaining men would be the ones to hoist the hammer and sickle above the German parliament building where the swastika once flew. In late 1945, Reznov, still accompanied by Dimitri, would journey to the Arctic Circle as we see in the Black Ops 1 campaign, this time under the command of General Dragovich and his unintelligent but fearless protege, Lev Kravchenko. This mission was known as Operation Olympus, and its true objective was to secure Dr. Friedrich Steiner, a German chemical weapons expert as we know now, likely a collaborator in Project Phoenix. He was the lead of the Toxic Storm project, better known as Project Nova. Having secured his deal with Dragovich to make weapons for the Soviet Union, the general took this opportunity to get rid of a thorn in his side. Reznov once again watching one of the closest to him being murdered in front of him as a result of the work of the fascist Reich. He then destroys a ship containing the Nova rockets and escapes with his life, though very soon he would be captured and incarcerated in the notorious Vorkuta Gulag. Now, one important question here is, what exactly was Reznov doing during the 3-year gap between Stalingrad and the Battle of Berlin? We do have some hints over in Black Ops Cold War, thankfully, which to me is an elephant in the room that not many people have talked about here on YouTube. Let's get into that. Now, we already know that Vanguard Zombies as a prequel deals a lot with legacy. Our first major introduction to this was in Season 6 of Cold War Zombies within an audio log called Lineage, where Kravchenko quizzes Dr. Jaeger on his ancestry, particularly the fact that his great uncle was a man named Wolfram von List, and that this man was involved with an entity who Kravchenko begins to say, though his name is cut off, and that's Cortifix. While Kravchenko was likely just concerned with the fact that the grandfather of one of his top researchers made a pact with the demon, he did not want Jaeger to do the same, which brings up an important point. When a character's ancestors are brought up, it's likely a very important thing. This has been a common occurrence across the entire Call of Duty franchise, of course. So what makes this idea more interesting is that a month before, with the release of Modern Toten, we got a similar piece of information from Gorev, where he says that Gorev is in fact nothing more than a code name, and the reason why he uses it is because his grandfather's brother was a famous soldier in Stalingrad, and that he doesn't want the attention. So grandfather's brother, would that be his great uncle, the exact same relation that von List is to Jaeger? It's a bit unknown. So if this was a one-off, it might not be so interesting, but then in Season 5 Reloaded, the same intel drop where Jaeger name drops von List for the first time is where Gorev once again mentions his ancestors, this time his grandfather himself. Jaeger walks into Gorev's office to discuss their mutual concerns over Kravchenko and Peck, and both toast using vodka that Gorev very sentimentally says belonged to his grandfather. Obvious Nikolai nostalgia baiting aside, we once again have Treyarch directing our focus to Gorev's ancestry. So going into Gorev, who's a character that hopefully you guys know about by now, just like with the director and how we knew Treyarch were redacting the name because it was someone we already knew, Gorev is very much the same. If his real last name was that of a totally new character, why bother being so secretive about it? Why black out that information? So before we even get into the main candidates though, one we have to remove right off the bat is Zykov, right? As cool as it might be to see Gorev related to Zykov, we would already know that by now, as Gorev would have likely cared more about the fate of his great uncle after finding out he was communicating from the Dark Ether. As we see though, he does not show this care at all, and it is most certainly not Zykov. But many people might jump to Nikolai, and it's very true that he was mentioned, to have a brother in the Old Ether storyline, sure. However, we do know that his brother did die in Stalingrad, and we never see him being given a name. So let alone being a famous soldier, I don't think that was the case with Nikolai's brother, and that is even assuming that there is a Nikolai in this new universe, which currently there is no reason for us to believe that. If there was, suddenly we get complications where we would have Eddie from the old story as well as a new Richthofen that exists somewhere, and so on and so forth, which makes things incredibly messy very quickly. And sure, you could just say, oh well, Eddie from the old universe is now the director, it's one character, and maybe new versions of Nikolai, Dempsey, and Takio exist out there. Sure, I mean, we could play around with theories and different headcanons, but I don't think that's the direction Craig is going for this time. What makes Reznov Reznov particularly interesting here is the fact that, as we mentioned earlier in the video, there is a gap of 3 years where we have no idea whatsoever of what he was doing, and what happens in that gap may be Anfang. If we think about what Gorev said specifically though, he said his great uncle was a famous soldier who fought in Stalingrad, and Reznov is very much instrumental in the battle by orchestrating the assassination of General Amsel. Gorev mentions he wants to hide from the attention he may receive, so we could assume that it would be positive attention, but remember, Reznov did fall from grace after 1945 due to the events in the Arctic Circle, where he was sent to Vorkuta for his alleged treason. Perhaps Gorev is embarrassed to use this name because of the same thing that may happen to him. What if they send him to the Gulag, right? That could happen. Even more interesting though is the fact that Kravchenko and Dragovich hated Reznov. While at first, this makes the Gorev connection seem unlikely, it must be said for someone like Kravchenko, who revealed in tormenting his enemies, taking the great nephew of Reznov under his wing and him becoming almost like the son Kravchenko never had, is equivalent to dancing on Reznov's grave. Now considering, again, that Kravchenko genuinely loved Gorev as a son, but Gorev took very little convincing from Jaeger to abandon Omega once the Forsaken was released, even while Kravchenko begged for him to come, that could lead to some serious implications we might not know about until maybe COD 2023 or some intel in the future. Now with all that out the way, right, how could this play out in the future of the Vanguard Zombie story? I first want to mention that I would hope to see at least Anfang get completely finished by at least February, to where we have some side Easter eggs, the main quest, beautiful cinematics. I would hope they at least flesh out one map in this game to get some rich story going, because I mentioned before in previous Zombies videos, I find it hard to believe we'll have any more than maybe 2 maps tops available to play in Vanguard Zombies. I just don't see many more maps being added. Maybe some extra game modes, something, sure. I would love even Outbreak on Caldera. I'll take anything, but I just find it hard to believe with what's going on behind the scenes that we're going to be seeing so many more Zombies maps added to this mode to further flesh out the story. But hey, you know what? Never say never. I just certainly hope that Craig has a bit of a backup plan, you know, on his belt, to where if Vanguard Zombie support gets canceled, they can still pick up with a lot of this backstory in their next Call of Duty in 2023. So we were told in an early blog post that the main quest will be tied to the arrival of an unexpected ally after Season 1, which will further expand the narrative of the Dark Ether. It'll then reveal more details about the characters and entities that players will have encountered thus far. While it's certainly possible this is just an ally in the Dark Ether who's going to be, you know, a new field upgrade, it could even be an entity that Be'lakar is trying to contact through the orb as an objective, right? It has to be said that that isn't really unexpected, right? I think everybody could have guessed that, but could everybody have guessed Reznov? Absolutely not. We were teased as to the entity known as Zealot Sparagamos in Forsaken, with his drawings of the Chrysalax, and most people who've been paying attention have actually been expecting him to show up, so he probably isn't a great candidate either to be added as some big surprise in Vanguard Zombies, right? So taking a look at the wording, it seems to imply that the main quest itself is what will expand the narrative of the Dark Ether, not necessarily the ally individually. Again, while it is more than likely we will get a new Dark Ether entity and a field upgrade with the main quest released, that isn't unexpected at all. What would be though is the arrival of a fan favorite character who people have been begging for in Zombies for over a decade, as long as I can remember, and one who could very easily fit into the story without having to retcon very much at all. You don't have to really break the canon of the original Black Ops. Now one last note before we end this video though, remember the red square from the World at War campaign? At the beginning of the first Russian mission, right, look at the area of Red Star that serves as the spawn room for Anfang. But that is about it. This has been dkdynamite. Leave all your thoughts down below in the comment section. What are your thoughts on Viktor Reznov potentially joining the zombie storyline and having a role to play, similar to the role they gave Weaver, since he just didn't have any arc for him at the end of Black Ops 1. They gave him new life with zombies, which I would love to see for Reznov, absolutely. Big shout out to Kaljitsu, the legend who is linked down below in the description, for helping me put together this video. It really means a lot to me. And you know what, guys? Look, I know zombies might not be your thing right now. People aren't interested in Anfang all that much. Vanguard is a disaster to say the least. But I hope that if you clicked on this video, you do care about the story altogether and the narrative that Craig Houston has been beautifully putting together over the past year and a half for this new Dark Ether reboot. I hope that you didn't click on this video, you know, hoping for something else or just to drop some hate. We don't need any more of that, right, in the community. Absolutely not. But with that being said, I really hope you guys have enjoyed, and peace out, everybody.